Central African Republic President Faustin Touadera has been re-elected as the country's president in an election that was marred by violence from rebel groups. The president won the election by securing 53% of the votes in the first round. For more on this, I'm joined by researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African School and Public and International Affairs, Advocate Sipho Mantula. Advocate Mantula, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. Let's start by looking at the re-election of the Central African Republic President Faustin Archange Touadera. What does it mean for this country after an election that was marred by violence?
Evening again, and even to the viewers. Remember last week when we were talking about the pre-election mood, the current mood now post the elections, it is what it is currently happening, that you are still having some rebel groups that are still seizing some of the towns, despite that we have the UN peacekeeping mission there. So the challenge of the newly elected president, once more, it is around the issues of bringing governance, security, and at the same time deal with the challenges of the other armed groups. Remember that even if he has been announced yesterday by the National Election Authority, there is still that a passing test of the Constitutional Court just to validate those election results. There are some still concerns that he's still not a yes good man or a good decision maker. He is still running away from taking decision as a leader because this is his second term. Remember that if there was no winner for this election, runoff was being scheduled for next month on the 14th of February.
But what exactly does this mean for the people of the CAR? With the president being re-elected, what can we expect going forward under his tenure?
It is really tough because many people of the Central African Republic were disenfranchised because of violence. There is still the level of poverty in that country. There is still the challenge of the armed groups. So for the people of that country, there are those who are still celebrating tonight about the re-election of the newly elected president. But when you look with the third eye, there is still the challenge in that country. Hence, you even saw yesterday that the Attorney General had to open charges against the former president. It means that even the issues of transitional justice have not yet crept into Central African Republic. So elections, in some instance, it seems that it is an event or it is a calendar ticking box process in this continent, because ultimately ordinary people don't find resonance with these elected leaders because there is still war, there is still poverty, there is still COVID-19 that is ravaging Bangui.
All right. So, of course, this election did have its own glitches or did come with some troubles. I mean, there was that offensive by rebel groups who tried to disrupt the vote after Francois Bozize's candidacy was rejected by the country's highest court. What can you tell us in terms of just the political turmoil in that country? What's the situation currently? Are things stable?
Not at all. Remember that Bozize having been charged yesterday with this judicial inquiry, it seems that there will be more challenges facing Central African Republic about how they deal with their former president, because in most instances, politically, you have what they call presidential immunity. But you'll find that in this instance, the United Nations peacekeeping missions, it is having serious challenges in some of the towns close to the capital city. And remember that the currently elected president is very close to Russia more than France, because Bozize was very close to France. So there is still this foreign intervention or foreign appetite into African politics. And this is the challenge that ECOWAS and the African Union should have remembered. It's the same challenge that we saw in Ivory Coast, with the same attitude of African leaders always fighting for power when there is this time when there is a need to serve their electorate.
All right. I also want us to look at the preparations for the elections in Uganda. What's the state of readiness there?
It is very tough. We are counting the 9 days in Kampala. The Electoral Commission there has pushed many districts not to be, to be not COVID friendly per se. One can say that there are some areas that they are not being allowed. President Museveni started yesterday to move around in other areas. Bobby Wine has been lamenting, by the way, the music turned politician, the young man from Uganda, has been lamenting about the irregularities, that he will be definitely taking these issues to court should there be any fault during the elections. I have picked up again the legal minds in almost 5 countries, your Kampala, Kenya, Burundi, Tanzania, which is the law societies of the East Africa region, therefore already pushed Museveni to the corner to be saying that we are watching because there is a sign of electoral violence in that country pre-election. So they are closely watching those elections, the legal minds in the East Africa region. We know very well African Union as well is monitoring, and IGAD is closely observing those elections in Kampala. But in fact, this is one of the challenges of President Museveni, having been into power since 1986, going for the 4th term, or as they say, it will be the 4th decade of President Museveni.
I want us to actually zoom in a bit on Bobi Wine, one of the contenders, the Ugandan musician turned politician, Robert Kyagulanyi. Now, he's promised to protest any illegalities, and any irregularities relating to the election on the January the 14th. Just talk us through that aspect as well.
Remember that Bobi Wine has been having challenges since last year, November. Immediately when the election campaign were pronounced, he has been not having access to the voters. There've been harassment to his team, electoral team. There've been challenges as well with the voters' roll, that he will say that he will challenge should there be any ghost voters in that voters' roll. The issue of the media freedom, he has been saying that even his media crew has not been allowed to cover some of his campaigns. So those are the challenges that the young man is lamenting, and he's definitely trying to look at the electoral laws in that country, despite that they are still on the side of the ruling party. And that is the nature of African elections, that you have most of the electoral management bodies still having a soft spot for the governing party, when they know very well that this is a transfer of political power. They have to be fair to all political parties. And that's where we see the challenge, that we can say elections in that country, they are securitized, they are militarized, and there is a need to engage on the spirit of tolerance and the role as well of opposition parties to be allowed. But I can assure you that they are using what one can say the social media, the door-to-door campaigns, and they are going to individual people. They are using weddings and funerals as well to start to campaign, because that's how the COVID-19 situation has ravaged Kampala as well, including the capital city. President Museveni will not be allowed to campaign in that area.
Speaking about this securitization of the elections, I mean, Bobi Wine joked a bit earlier, or while speaking to reporters, saying that he wouldn't be surprised if he's even arrested in days leading up to these elections or on the day of the elections. Do you think these kind of concerns are warranted?
Definitely, his concerns are warranted. Hence, I earlier raised the issue of the legal minds from almost 5 African countries. And these are the big legal minds when we were talking of Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, where they've been looking. These are judges, these are lawyers who are monitoring the electoral process. But like he's saying, to be arrested during the elections will definitely cause what we call electoral dilemma. It will cause an electoral commotion in terms of how do we deal with the candidate who's been challenged by the security forces. Because remember, during the elections, post-elections, the role of the security forces is to stabilize the country. It is not to harass the candidates. But as you know, Bobi Wine has been getting beaten, arrested, going to court in and out, losing some of his close friends And I can assure you, I don't think President Museveni is aware of the international solidarity, regional solidarity that this young man has already galvanized.
That was Advocate Sipho Mantula, researcher at the Thabo Mbeki African School on Public and International Affairs.